name is Alfredo Artiles. I'm professor of education at Arizona State University in Tempe. There is a close connection between my history before I moved to the United States over 20 years ago and what I'm doing now. I was in education back in Central America working with students with disabilities. A mix of students who have severe disabilities, more medically based type of disabilities, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, but also students who had no clear cause of disabilities, those students who fall in this gray area, kids who have emotional disturbances, learning disabilities. I was living at that time in Guatemala at a time when there was a lot of political turmoil. And politics and oppression and inequality came together in the educational system because a lot of these students had no other access to education, depending on the area of the country where they were living. So education was not a universal right, it was a privilege in many of these contexts. And it was ironic that you had to have a disability to be able to access educational services. If you didn't, you will probably be relegated to go to school for a couple of years and then go to the informal economy and start working at age 5. So all of these things really forced me to question many issues about the place of education in society and the power of education to help people move up in the social ladder and be empowered to begin to make changes in communities. And as I was studying my PhD in special education, I read a lot about the incredible knowledge base that has been developed in the United States and in other developed nations about disability. But I never heard anything about poverty or inequality or race. And yet, when I went to schools to do my work in Virginia at that time, most of the kids were Black and low income, and in many areas of the state, Latinos that were beginning to move to the region. So the disconnect between what the research community was doing and producing as knowledge to carry out the activities of the field and what was actually transpiring in schools was rather deep, and I couldn't understand why we couldn't address or take up those issues of race and class and gender. When I first started my career in higher education in the United States in the early 90s, there was hardly any attention to this. So 18 years later, we have a very strong requirement from the federal government to examine and systematically monitor this. So the political arena has changed in the sense that we have a climate, a framework that affords some opportunities. At the same time, for future generations of researchers, what I will suggest is that they need to bring to this analysis interdisciplinary understandings of child development, learning, human development, as well as teaching and instruction. Because the complexities that are embedded in this problem are so significant that the traditional psychological paradigm that we have used in special education is not going to allow us to address the complexities in some meaningful ways.